Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. So we can tell by the accent you're not exactly from Switzerland. So could I firstly ask you, why on earth have you got an interest in Switzerland?
Yeah, I get that question more or less every time, as you'd expect. Basically, it's so random, as you would also expect. Back quite a few years ago now, I decided to watch Champions League one night. For some reason, I decided not to watch any big team. FC Basel were playing, a team from Romania who don't even exist anymore. I remember Basel when they played Manchester United and Liverpool years before that, and I quite liked the kits, so I decided, I'm going to watch the game for their kits, basically. And then from that game on, I decided I'm going to try and watch as many as I could. But in the UK, there wasn't many times we were on TV apart from in European football. So they played Manchester United next at Old Trafford. They almost won that game, last minute equaliser, denied them the win. And from then on, I watched pretty much all the games that I could. After that, I noticed there wasn't really anywhere on social media for Swiss football in English like there was Spanish and all these other leagues, and I decided to create the Twitter account, see where it went really, and it led to me basically covering the entire league. And now it's branched out, obviously, the national team, men's and women's, and it's kind of made a lot of good things for me in terms of, I've got friends over in Switzerland. I've been over a few times now. Something that just started so randomly is now kind of a big part of my life.
So could I ask you then, just on a personal note, this isn't a full-time job of yours, is it?
No. So basically this has been a hobby for the most part. I had a couple of years where I was the social media manager for Basel's English page. And again, that just came off the back of what I started years prior. So that was an unexpected thing. So that was a kind of part-time role. And then from there, sometimes I'll have kind of paid opportunities when major tournaments come around, and I'll have like TV things and things of that nature, but it's never been more than just kind of a hobby, part-time sort of thing.
So then let's speak about the World Cup. We can speak about the group first, then we're going to speak about the qualifiers that have got them there. So Canada, the co-hosts, are in the group, and Qatar and Bosnia. I would think Switzerland should finish first.
Yeah, I think as soon as that group came out, even when it was undecided if it was going to be Bosnia or Italy in there, I think there was high hopes that Switzerland would qualify in first. I think, after Bosnia became that team to go through, I think those expectations grew even more. So yeah, definitely think the expectation there is to finish top of the group. Definitely get out of the group. It's easier than ever now to do so, and they've got such a pedigree in doing that. But yeah, I think if they don't top the group, there'll actually be a bit of disappointment, because they've got themselves to a level now where they can be seen in this group as one of the major side, to be honest. And they'll be expected to top that group.
For sure. And of course, with Qatar getting back into another World Cup, it came as quite a surprise to me that Qatar have been such a small footballing nation, but yet they've managed to make their second World Cup appearance in the last two consecutive tournaments. So who do you think, maybe Canada could be quite the harder opponent in the team, if you like, but as someone who follows Switzerland, who do you think is going to be the hardest team of the group?
Yeah, so I think the Canada game is going to be the most tricky game, especially when you're playing them in Canada, so that's going to be a difficult game. But I think it benefits Switzerland and probably Canada too that the two perceived easier games come first. So hypothetically, Switzerland could be home and dry by that third game, and a lot of times you see in these kind of last group games that teams play weekend sides, or it's just it kind of plays out in a draw or whatever. So yeah, I think it will benefit Switzerland that they won't really, or they shouldn't have to go into that game with anything really riding on it. Of course, the top spot might be up for grabs, and that could be important as well, depending on how the other groups are shaping up. But in terms of the actual jeopardy of it, I think it's not going to be an issue, which is a real bonus, because if they started off against Canada, that's a really tough game against the host nation to start, and then you have to then play catch up if you don't get the right result there. So yeah, it's definitely a good thing that Canada comes last, and they should be able to take care of the other two opponents.
So the qualifying then, you played some smaller sides. I would have thought that Switzerland would have been the favourites for the majority of them. The likes of Kosovo, Slovenia, Sweden being the hardest game. What did you learn from that performance?
Yeah, the team surprised me, to be honest, because I always go back to the qualifying for the European Championships last time. They had a really, really easy group one of the easiest they've ever had over this run where they've qualified to all these tournaments. They played Israel, Andorra, Belarus, Kosovo were in that one as well. Romania were the next highest seed in that group. So there was nothing really to fear in that group. They won their first 3 games quite convincingly, and then it was almost like they decided this is too easy, we're going to make it quite difficult for ourselves. And they didn't win. They won one of their next 7 games. Their final 7 games, it was against Andorra, and they just kind of squeaked through because the rest of the group was so weak. So that was a real surprise that they struggled so much. So then when they were drawn into this World Cup qualifying group against Sweden, who probably over the years have had the better of Switzerland in games and are of a similar level, even if they've not really always reached the major tournaments, that was seen as a game that was going to be really difficult. And then, of course, you had Slovenia, always a tricky side as well, and Kosovo improving as well. So I think the group for me was one of the hardest that I've seen Switzerland play over the last, 10, 15 years. They've really struggled. It was one I thought they would really struggle in, but they came through it again in flying colours. They didn't really put a foot wrong till the end when they were already qualified. They took care of Sweden, who admittedly had a really poor qualifying campaign. They took care of them easily, and it was almost too comfortable. And again, that's probably gave more cause for optimism going into this tournament, because since last summer when they played a couple of friendlies in America after post-season, they've really been on a roll. So it's been refreshing to see the side kind of take on all these challenges and be so comfortable after a period of time, especially after the Euros, where you felt like the team might be in transition with a lot of players retiring, like Shaqiri and Sommer. The team's kind of reinvented itself a little bit and came back again and came back strong.
The friendlies leading up to this World Cup, Germany and onwards. Germany was a loss of a 3-4 defeat, which is a pretty interesting one because Germany, I've seen be quite up and down. I mean, especially in the last few tournaments, we can never quite understand where Germany is going to be. But then you've played Australia, Norway and Jordan, and you've got some half-decent results out of all of them. Perhaps the Australia game you would have liked to win.
Yeah, for sure. And again, there was a bit of discourse after that game. Granit Xhaka came out and basically said if they play like that, they'll be going home after 3 games, which I think is a bit dramatic. I feel like the first half against Australia was very good. It was kind of similar to a lot of the other games where they played one half and then the second half it was just almost foot off the gas. Even the games against Germany and Jordan and nations like this, they almost changed the entire team in the second half. So again, you need to kind of go with the fact that friendlies are there to be used as preparation. Against Australia, I think the fact that they didn't make too many changes in the second half and the level kind of dropped was a worry, but I don't really think it's too much to be so dramatic about. These games are there to change tactics, which was done, to change players, to test players, and ultimately, like they have done for the last 6 tournaments prior to this, Switzerland have always been ready when the tournament comes around, so I don't really see an issue there. I think, as anyone would say, you'd rather have these kind of shakier moments in the friendlies than later on. I think another example is before the last World Cup, or before the last Euro, we played Ghana and lost 2-0, and it was a really poor game. Switzerland offered nothing and the alarm bells were ringing, but again, Switzerland went into the tournament and performed really well, reached a quarter-final. So yeah, I don't think there should be too much emphasis put on the friendlies. There's been a lot of positive in there, but again, I don't think the negatives should be looked at too much either.
I mean, it's disappointing to know that Shaqiri retired. It was such a shame to not see him on the team sheet because he always does well in these tournaments. So the key players then would be Granit Xhaka, Kanji and Bolo. What can we make of a side that has those amazing proven top talents, but it's mixed in with some younger players like the 20-year-old Manzambi?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that still underestimate Switzerland. That they forget that this, for the most part, the core of this squad has been around for a long time. Even though you did lose guys like Jan Sommer and Fabian Schär and Shaqiri last summer, in the last Euro, there's still a lot of players there like Akanji, Ricardo Rodriguez has been around since 2014 as well. Granit Xhaka has been in the team since 2011. Breel Mbolo has been in the team for a long time as well. So there's a lot of players dotted around the team that have been there, been at Euros, been at World Cups. This is nothing new to them really. And then you've got a lot of these kind of younger players coming in as well. Some of them have a lot of experience, like Noah Okafor or Ruben Vargas, who have been there for quite a long time as well. But then Johan Manzambi, his first major tournament coming up, he's a young player, exciting player that is only going to add to the team. And that is one of the reasons why the team, for me, has been able to reinvent itself after losing such big players. There was a period, especially leading up to the last Euros, where there was the question kind of grew even more of what would happen once Shaqiri retired, because everyone is reliant on him. You know, he produced so many big moments, he scored so many goals for Switzerland, but it's almost like that transition has been seamless, and I don't think anyone expected that. Obviously, you'd rather have him there, but you know, it's such a testament to the way the team have kind of reinvented itself that they've been able to come through that and kind of look almost better. They look more settled, and to me, they look a stronger unit than they have done in any time really in the last kind of 6 tournaments.
Manzambi has really broken onto the scene this season in the Bundesliga with Freiburg. What can we make of him? I mean, are you expecting him to start every game?
Well, I don't think he's done himself any harm recently. You know, he burst onto the scene in those summer friendlies against Mexico and USA last summer. To be honest, he wasn't on my radar at all back then. And again, he wasn't really a big player for Freiburg until this season. But I kind of feel cheated in a way, because he was kind of my player that I would always, leading up to this tournament, that I would always kind of bring up. But the fact that Freiburg got to European final and played Aston Villa, his name's been spotlighted a lot more people know of him now than they maybe would have done if he just performed exclusively in the Bundesliga. But he's a player that has been involved in friendlies recently, and again, I think he's done himself no harm to get a start in the tournament. I'm not sure if he will right away, because there's such a strong, you know, midfield and wingers in the team, but he's definitely going to have an impact for me. He's just a player, a fearless player that is kind of taking a place in this squad that wasn't there for him last summer. You know, he wasn't even in contention, and all of a sudden now he's one of the first names. And again, he's only 20, so he's only going to get better. And yeah, he's a player I'm really excited for, not just for this tournament, but going forward.
So the World Cup then is obviously a day away, and we're looking at a team that is stacked with talent. But of course, Switzerland haven't got to the quarterfinals since 1954, but they do consistently get to the round of 16. So starting off the tournament strong, then perhaps finishing top of the group. How do you think they can match up against sides like the Englands or the Ghanas or those sorts of teams from around the world?
Well, for a period of time, you know, Switzerland kind of underperformed once they get out of the group. You know, they had some nice moments, like they played Argentina 2014, took them extra time. And then they came up against Sweden at the Euros, Poland at the Euros, and lost both those games. So there was a period of time where it was like they weren't taking that next step. But then the last 2 European Championships, they beat France, of course, that memorable game, but they beat them on penalties, and then they lost out to Spain on penalties, and then the last Euros they lost to England on penalties as well. So they've made a lot of progress, even though kind of the end result's been heartbreaking. They've reached, you know, quarterfinals, and the goal is now to go ahead and do the same in the World Cup. I think people still dismiss Switzerland, but there is a real belief that they can go deep here. And again, I don't really know the permutations in terms of where they finish and who they might play next, but there's a belief that they can go further into the quarterfinal of the World Cup, maybe even further than that, because they can compete against any team on their day. They've shown that against Spain a few years ago, against England, they took them all the way. That France game that I mentioned, you know, they don't really. Obviously, there's nations that are bigger than them, have a better quality player across the board, but on their day they can compete with anyone and get great results. So I feel like they shouldn't be underestimated anymore, and they still are to an extent, but it wouldn't surprise me, as much as I'm biased, if they do have a deep run in the tournament.
So Craig, then where do you think Switzerland are going to place in the World Cup?
Well, I'll play it safe and say quarter-final, but I can really believe that they could get a semi-final. I'm not going to go any further than that, because that might sound crazy.
Well, Craig, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.